Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC Live on Cruz versus Johnson. And this is a very special event as we will see our first free televised UFC title fight as the bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz will take on the challenger Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. This card will feature 4 main card fights, which I'll be predicting for, along with a number of preliminary fights, and I'll be breaking down 4 of those in briefer formats. This event will take place on October 1st, 2011, live from the Verizon Center in Washington, D.C. And before getting into that, let's take a look at the prediction race. Currently, I'm sitting in 5th, even though I went 7-2 at UFC 135. I did fairly well. A lot of other predictors did well, did fairly good as well. And when it comes right down to it, there weren't a lot of deviation in the picks. It was a fairly easy night to predict, other than the Hunt over Rothwell fight, which a lot of people got wrong. I'm sitting in 5th, but if you take a quick look, I've predicted less fights than everybody else, and my winning percentage is significantly higher than everyone else's, because I don't like to pick fights I don't get a good feel for, so I'm just not going to take a shot in the dark at 2 guys. As you'll see on this card, I leave a couple of them off, because I take pride in my record. I don't want to cheat you guys into thinking I have a good feel for a fight when I really don't. And on that note, it's time to get into the predictions. Alright, let's kick off the preliminary picks. You'll be able to watch these fights on Facebook, and we're in the welterweight division to kick it off. Josh Neer versus Keith Wisniewski. Looking at this fight, I don't know a lot about Wisniewski. He is making his UFC debut, riding a 6-fight winning streak, and is probably best known for getting his arm broken by Shinya Aoki. Wisniewski has the majority of his wins by submission, but his opponent, Josh Neer, has an equally impressive win total in that category. Neer has won 6 of his last 7 after a 2-3 stint the last time he was in the UFC. Neer has fought with superior talent, and I expect that he will feel right at home inside the octagon, while his opponent may suffer from first fight jitters. Neer's striking should be better, so I'll take him by stoppage. Next up, Shane Roller versus TJ Grant. Grant has alternated wins and losses in the UFC to a tune of 3-3, while in his first 2 UFC bouts, Shane Roller has made the highlight reel twice, first with the brutal knockout of Thiago Tavares, and then by he himself getting knocked out by Melvin Gillard. Now Grant is a BJJ brown belt, with the majority of his wins coming via submission, while Roller is an NCAA Division I wrestler and a 3-time All-American. Statistically, Grant has been vulnerable against talented wrestlers, only able to stop 13% of his opponent's takedowns. This is his first bout at lightweight, which could help him to deal with this issue, but Roller is a solid wrestler and has power in his hands. I'll take Roller by decision. Next up, we have Paul Sass versus Michael Johnson. Paul Sass is undefeated with 10 of his 11 wins by submission, including 8 by his signature Sass angle. In his UFC debut against Mark Holst, he pulled guard several times until he caught him with his self-titled triangle hold. Sass is a BJJ brown belt, and his opponent Michael Johnson has been submitted on 4 occasions, which is a major concern in this matchup. Johnson was the Ultimate Fighter finalist and has shown remarkable improvement since his time on the show. In the finals, he dominated Jonathan Brookings with his striking, but tired and lost rounds 2 and 3 in the decision. In his last outing, he showed his superior striking again, stopping his opponent at the end of the first round. Sass's submission skills have me concerned, but I feel Johnson's superior striking and wrestling will be too much for Sass as long as he doesn't gas. That rhymed. I'll take Johnson by knockout. Eve Edwards versus Javier Olivero. Edwards is looking to rebound from a vicious knockout against Sam Stout, while Oliveira's return to the UFC was unsuccessful, dropping his promotional record to 1-3. Oliveira is a BJJ black belt, but Edwards is also solid on the mat, and Oliveira's takedown defense is questionable. Edwards is a veteran fighter who should have the advantage standing. The majority of his defeats have come against talented strikers like Stout, Mark Hominick, and Dwayne Ludwig, and Oliveira has been working on his striking, but I'll take Edwards in this fight by decision. And those are my 4 preliminary picks. Let's get to the televised main card. Kicking off the main card, we start in the lightweight division as 13-6 handsome Matt Wiman battles Ultimate Fighter winner Mac Danzig 21-8-1. Now this is a rematch resulting from their controversial UFC 115 battle, which Wiman won. Danzig enters this fight off a win, while Wiman had a 3-fight winning streak snapped in his last bout. In their first meeting, Wiman was victorious, but his win can be chalked up to an error on the part of the referee. Danzig secured an early takedown, but quickly found himself in a tight guillotine choke. Wiman used the hold to move to top position, and when Matt felt him go limp, he told the ref, and the fight was stopped. Unfortunately, Danzig had just relaxed himself in an effort to cope with Wiman's squeeze, but was declared the loser by submission with no tap-out or loss of consciousness. What can this fight tell us heading into this one? Not a whole lot. Looking at Danzig first, since winning the Ultimate Fighter, he has struggled to find his groove with 4 losses over his last 6 fights, and had a nagging chest injury that kept him out of action for a prolonged period of time. Danzig is a talented fighter. He has 5 career knockouts along with 10 submission wins. He has had flashes of brilliance in the octagon. He submitted BJJ black belt Mark Bocek and used a counter left hook to knock out Joe Stevenson in a fight that he really needed to win. His striking is technical. Against Clay Guida, he had a lot of success with his hands, and when the Carpenter took him down, Mac was able to attack off his back, offering a number of submissions. That being said, being on your back in MMA is not a good thing. During Danzig's losing streak, he got taken down 6 times by Jim Miller, 10 times by Guida, and Josh Neer won a decision by beating Mac up on the mat, which included 3 submission attempts. Matt Wiman is more than capable of reproducing this type of game plan. In similar fashion to Guida, Wiman is an aggressive fighter that uses relentless attack to break down his opponent. He overwhelmed and outworked Cole Miller, beating him up both on the mat and on the feet. He has heavy elbows from the top, and when he's able to posture up, he can do a lot of damage with his strikes. Against Dennis Seaver, he worked very hard for his takedowns, completing 5 of 16. In the first and third round, Wiman had trouble keeping Seaver on his back, but had much more success in the second round. Wiman used punches and elbows from the top to open Seaver up and dominated the round. Had he been able to duplicate that success in at least one more stanza, he would have won the fight. Mac Danzig is the more technical striker and showed that he can stop an aggressive opponent with his power and timing. Adding to this, Wiman has had issues with technical strikers. I already mentioned Seaver, and he also suffered a defeat against Sam Stout. I think that Wiman has improved significantly since their first meeting, and his defeat against Seaver will make him a better fighter. Danzig has been difficult to legitimately finish, but I expect that Wiman will be able to dictate the pace and have more success than he did against Dennis Seaver, so I'll take Matt Wiman to defeat Mac Danzig by decision. We move now to the welterweight division as 9-3 Anthony Rumble Johnson will battle 14-2 Charlie the Spaniard Brenneman. Johnson has won 4 of his last 5, while Brenneman derailed the rising star of Rick Story in his last bout and has won 2 in a row. Now neither guy has big submission potential, but both have used their mat skills to earn multiple victories. When Brenneman defeated Story, he used his wrestling to completely neutralize his opponent. Anthony Johnson took a similar approach in his last outing, using takedowns and top control to defeat Dan Hardy. In these fights, Rumble completed 4 of 5 takedowns, while Charlie was successful on 5 of 8 attempts. At first glance, both guys had similar game plans, but upon further review, there are some marked differences in their top game. Brenneman keeps tight to his opponent. We saw it against Story and also against Johnny Hendricks. He keeps body on body, throwing few punches, slowly working to pass his opponent's guard, looking to stifle his adversary on the mat. Johnson's main focus against Hardy was on posturing up and doing damage. Johnson has solid top control, and when he's able to create separation, he drops heavy elbows and punches. Now, statistically, both guys have solid numbers. Johnson's are a little bit better, stuffing 3 of every 4 takedown attempts, which will be important in this bout. Normally, 2 strong wrestlers will equate to a stand-up war, but with Brenneman's track record, I'm not 100% sure of this. I already mentioned his takedown numbers against Story, and against another highly touted wrestler in Johnny Hendricks, he completed 2 of 4 attempts in just over 5 minutes of fighting before getting knocked out. I anticipate that Brenneman is going to be looking for takedowns because he will struggle with Johnson's striking. Rumble has been training with Kung Lee, and it has really shown up, especially with his kicks. Johnson has power in everything he throws. He stopped Kevin Burns with a head kick and rocked Dan Hardy in similar fashion in the opening moments of the first round of their fight. Anthony's going to have an 8-inch reach advantage, which he exploits with a long jab and an overhand right that has fight-ending potential. Conversely, I haven't been overly impressed with Brenneman's stand-up. Against Hendricks, he threw single strikes and then quickly closed the distance. When he does get in tight, he'll dirty box, mixing in short punches, uppercuts, and he will target the head with a quick knee strike. This could be an issue in this fight, as Brenneman will have to get past the reach of Johnson and then deal with the size and strength advantage when he gets in tight. Rumble is the biggest welterweight in the UFC and knows how to use it. These advantages in all areas of the cage. He was able to shrug off Koscheck's early takedown attempts with pure strength, but when he got tired, he got taken down. Where Johnson will have the size and strength advantage, I anticipate that Brenneman will have the edge in speed and endurance. Johnson cuts a ton of weight, and even in the Hardy fight where he was on top, he showed signs of fatigue in the later stages. If Johnson fades early, Charlie will outwork him and earn the decision. While this scenario is a possibility, I don't like basing predictions on ifs. I know that Johnson has better striking technique and power. He's a good wrestler, and his size should give him the edge on the mat. Brenneman got knocked out by Johnny Hendricks, and when Hendricks clipped him, he got very wild, which created openings for Hendricks to finish the fight. If Brenneman can't get the fight to the mat, Johnson has more than enough power to get the knockout, and if he's able to win the grappling game, he could turn the tables on Brenneman by grinding out a decision win. In the end, I like Johnson's striking advantages, so my prediction is Anthony Johnson to defeat Charlie Brenneman by knockout. In the co-main event of the night, heavyweight Stefan Skyscraper Struve, 25-5, and Pat H.D. Berry, 6-3, will square off. Both fighters are coming off brutal knockout defeats, which severely damaged their positions within the heavyweight division. Physically, this could not be more of a mismatch. Struve will measure in at a foot taller than H.D., and he will also have a significant reach advantage. While will these physical disadvantages be too much for Berry to overcome? Maybe. Let's take a look. Berry's been fighting against opponents that were bigger than him for most of his career. He stopped 6'6" Dan Evanson with leg kicks, knocked out 6'4" kickboxer Anthony Hardonk, and rocked 6'4" Czech Congo with a perfectly placed overhand right. So Berry does have experience fighting taller opponents, but Struve is by far the tallest to date. Pat's number one weapon is his devastating leg kicks. He stopped Evanson, but he also had success using them against Hardonk, and he put on a kicking clinic in the Joey Beltran fight. And no matter how tall a fighter is, his legs are always within reach. Adding to his kicks, his hands are dangerous. He will throw them in combination with his leg strikes, and as we saw against Congo, he has a powerful overhand right. Now, I have three major concerns with HD. His ground game is weak. He has been submitted twice, but I don't know if this will be an issue, as Struve really isn't the type to shoot for a takedown. Secondly, Berry's conditioning isn't a certainty. 7 of his 9 fights have finished inside the first half, and he appeared to gas against Joey Beltran. The third concern stems from his last fight. Once is an accident, twice is a trend. Against Tim Hague, Berry hurt him but got overconfident and got submitted. When he dropped Congo and moved in for the kill, he left himself vulnerable and paid for it. Berry is confident in his skills and is the superior striker against almost anyone he fights, but mistakes will cost him fighting at this level. Stefan Struve's largest win total by far are his submissions, but as I already mentioned, he doesn't attempt a lot of takedowns, relying on his opponent to take it to the ground. Struve doesn't have a wrestling background, and in this case, his height could hamper him, as he will have to deal with Berry's low center of gravity, and in all reality, closing the distance for Struve could prove counterproductive. If the fight does go to the mat, it will be advantage Struve, whether he's on top or bottom. He can grab a submission off his back or orchestrate a sweep like he did against Sean McCorkle and finish the fight with his ground and pound. His reach and long frame make him difficult to control on the mat, especially for Berry, who is really a novice grappler. On the feet, Struve knocked out Christian Moorcraft during a wild exchange, but I'm not 100% sold on his striking. He has been knocked out 3 times in the UFC, along with his last bout. Junior Dos Santos quickly earned the TKO, and Roy Nelson also knocked him out. His resume of victories is not overly impressive when you start to take into account who he defeated. Here in the close decision win over Paul Buentello, who is far from an elite striker, he got dominated by Christian Moorcraft until the knockout and beat Sean McCorkle, who was released after one more fight. If you compare Berry and Struve's records, Berry has had a success against elite strikers like Hardonk and Krokop and was doing really well against a tough guy in Joey Beltran, while Struve seems to welt against similar competition. If you look at the punch Nelson dropped Struve with, Berry throws a similar overhand right, and add in the leg kicks that have earned him 3 TKO wins, and there will be lots of opportunity for HD to get the victory. I'm curious to see how Pat rebounds from the first real knockout of his career, kickboxing included, but I trust his chin over Struve's, and I have Pat Berry defeating Stefan Struve by knockout. Moving to the main event, the UFC Bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz, 18-1, will look to make his 4th successful title defense as he takes on 14-1 Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. The challengers won 4 in a row, including defeating former WEC Bantamweight champ Miguel Torres, while Cruz has won 9 in a row and is coming off a win over Uriah Faber. Evaluating these two combatants, they share a lot of similarities. Both guys are incredibly quick, have solid striking, and incorporate a lot of takedowns in their arsenal. Looking first at their speed, Demetrius Johnson could be the fastest man in the UFC. He besieged Kid Yamamoto with his quickness, completing 10 of 15 takedowns, and was able to avoid all but 17 of Yamamoto's 67 attempted strikes. I will give him the edge in quickness against Cruz, but not by much. In fact, the edge that Demetrius could be negated by the combination of Cruz's speed and all-around elusiveness. Where Johnson is one of the quickest fighters, Cruz is one of the most unorthodox. Dominick is continually moving when both attacking and defending. He shows his opponents all sorts of odd angles that result in a lot of swinging and missing. Uriah Faber is one of the division's better strikers, but he struggled to find success against Cruz, landing only a third of the 180 strikes he attempted. And he's not alone, as Cruz's striking defense is remarkable, avoiding 78% of his opponent's attempted strikes. Mighty Mouse's speed has been the difference against the majority of his opponents, but I think that he will have a hard time getting his hands on the champion. Now, Demetrius relies heavily on his wrestling, completing 74% of his takedown attempts, and he has attempted a lot. Over his last 4 fights, he successfully completed 23 takedowns, including 10 against the aforementioned Kid Yamamoto. Johnson's takedowns are a product of his speed. Most wrestlers will either shoot from the outside or clinch and go from there, but Johnson will close the distance and at the last possible moment drop under his opponent's opponent's hands and drive through their hips to complete the takedown. But, again, Cruz's elusiveness will make this tough, as Johnson will have to work very hard to get in range to attempt his shot. Even if the challenger is able to find that range, Dominick has proven incredibly difficult to take down. He has defended 83% of his attempted takedowns over his last 9 fights, and he has fought some of the best wrestlers in the division during that span, including Faber, Scott Jorgensen, and Joseph Benavidez twice. In addition to this impressive stat, Cruz has actually out-wrestled these wrestlers, completing almost 60% of his takedowns. Johnson has had issues with fighters that are able to match his wrestling skills, especially in his only defeat, where he was taken down 10 times on 11 attempts by Brad Pickett. I anticipate that the bigger Cruz will have similar success with his wrestling against Johnson, which will take Demetrius out of his comfort zone. In the striking department, Johnson doesn't have a huge list of knockouts, but he does have one by head kick, and he also showcased some solid low kicks in the Torres fight. He will attack in combinations, mixing up his punches and kicks, and he uses an overhand right to set up his takedown attempts. The champ's striking is on another level. I've already talked about how difficult he is to hit, but his repertoire is also quite impressive. He has excellent timing when both attacking and counter-striking. His low kicks are heavy, and he likes to mix in a knee strike. If there was a knock on Cruz's striking, it's that he doesn't look to finish. He focuses more on outpointing his opponents and has earned 7 decisions in his last 8 outings. Both fighters have fantastic endurance. Johnson has never been finished, and Cruz submitted just once, so I anticipate that this fight is going to go the distance. Cruz has experience fighting guys in a similar style of Johnson, but Johnson has never fought anyone like Cruz, so I'm going to take Dominick Cruz to defeat Demetrius Johnson by unanimous decision and retain his bantamweight title. Welcome back to Kamikaze Countdown. 2 things I want to talk about. The first is the ability to finish a fight. I hear so often there are people talking about fighters that aren't the elite because they don't finish fights. And you look at there's 2 sides of the coin. You've got guys like George St. Pierre, I mentioned Dominick Cruz, and Frankie Edgar, all accused of not finishing fights. On the other side of it, you've got guys like Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, and we just saw John Jones, who do finish a lot of their fights. And the way I look at it is, you can't expect the New York Yankees to blow out their opponent every night. You can't expect the New England Patriots to lay a whooping on whoever they face, beat them 45-7. It's important to be able to win tight games, and I think Anderson Silva, his style works better with finishing fights. That's what he looks for. I think it's just as impressive for somebody like George St. Pierre to go out, fight top-level talent like Josh Koscheck, like John Fitch, like Jake Shields, and push those guys and beat them for 5 full rounds. I think it's just as impressive. So, take a look at yourself, and when you're commenting on, oh, you didn't finish the fight, look at the guy's overall performance. Sure, it wasn't as definitive as a knockout or submission in the end, but if they go out and earn a decision victory, that is, it shows just how good a fighter they really are. The second, I am looking at I'd like to start a prediction tournament. I'm in a YouTube prediction race. What I'd like to do is, the people who follow me, you don't have to do a YouTube video. I want to do a Grand Prix type tournament where you send in your predictions. I might do 3 events per round. You're paired up with certain people. I'll keep track of my videos. We'll talk about it. And after 3 rounds, the guy with the best record advances to the next round, so only 1 person's left. If that's something that interests you, send me an instant message with your email address, because that's how I'm going to contact you. I'd like to start this at UFC 137 is my goal. It won't cost anything. You won't win anything, but you'll get to compete. Get your friends involved, whatever you want to do. Hopefully, I will do this with a minimum of 8 people. The more the merrier. There might be more people in each group, depending on what numbers I get. But if you're interested, I need to know before UFC 137 so we can talk about it. I'll do some kind of quick show to do the matchups so you can see who you're going against, and we'll go from there. And I'll judge by how people are interested, how much work I'll put into it. But please, if you are, send me an instant message, let me know. Kamikaze Countdown. So those are my predictions for UFC Live on Cruz versus Johnson. 4 preliminary picks, 4 main card picks, and of course very excited for our main event, which is a bantamweight title fight between Dominick Cruz, the champion, and Demetrius Johnson. First free title fight we've seen on free TV. And this is going to be an excellent fight. Whether Cruz finishes him in the first round or goes the distance, Johnson's really going to push him, so check that out. And make sure you leave your comments. I love hearing from you guys, what you have to say, good, bad, or indifferent. But again, if you say something nasty, I'm going to fire back. Comment on my rankings. I've added in some of the new Strikeforce fighters coming in, like Kung Lee and Dan Henderson. Let me know if you think you're in the right place. Should be higher, should be lower. Let me know about that. Please, if you are interested in the prediction contest, contact me. I'd like to get as many people involved in the prediction tournament. I'd like to get as many people involved as possible, make it big. There's a limit to how many people will do it, but we'll see what the response is. And as always, check out the rest of my competitors in the prediction race, the YouTube prediction race. Let me know what you think about them. You can check out Sports Interaction if you want to have a betting site, get a betting site going, make some money. Check out the link in the description below. You can get a little bit of money that way, and I think that's enough from me. I'm out of here. Thank you for watching Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC Live on Versus Cruz versus Johnson.